So again, everyone, this is Kathy. Welcome to Event Management. I'm going to hang out here in PowerPoint with you for just a few slides. Then I'm going to bounce over to dp2 and we're going to get really good things done and give you a good overview, hopefully, of event management. I want to start out here with some definitions though. What is event management? I promise you throughout the session I'll get a whole lot more specific with very specific working examples than what I'm starting out with here. An event is a milestone in dp2 that when triggered makes something happen. Yeah, it's pretty wide open. It truly is wide open. We want this session, you guys, to whet your appetite and get your creative juices flowing. We have examples in dp2 for you. You have them in your 20.3 version if you're already upgraded, but really this is designed for you. You tell us what types of events and milestones are important for you in your dp2 production environment. So you define the event, although we have some great samples for you to help you get started and help you learn the system. They might be realistic events that you also set up and trigger. You define what happens. And it's not like it's magic what happens, guys. Really, KPL commands take over and make something happen, whether it be send an email, send a text, update an order status to something, or write an image out to a web server or whatever that something may be. So it's truly KPL. So that's why this session is intended for all audiences, for dp2 operators. But for you to implement this, you might need to call on your IT people to get your email server communication set up so that you can be sending emails when something happens in dp2. You would definitely need to call on your KPL programmer type people to make that something happen with commands and with code. So you decide how and when events get triggered. I'm going to show you all this, and when they do get triggered, those actions, those KPL commands are sent to worker queues. And they sit there and they sit there and they sit there until workers are running, actually executing from there. I have a visual for you here. I went by it very quickly. In dp2 in just a second, you'll see this events taskbar. That's one of the new pieces of 20.3 if you're already upgraded. It's a short list, right? You guys are all used to very sophisticated workflows in dp2. You put lots of pieces of the puzzle together and make things happen. So this is really no different. In this case, it's events, making things happen. There's an event manager table, there's a worker queue table, and there are workers. And this is really kind of the chain of events that you'll see me walk through in dp2. So some examples, and I'm going to step through these examples. What I'm going to do, you guys, is kind of lay out an order as the example for today's session. An order comes into dp2, maybe automatically from a command file, maybe manually, the operator adds it. So I'm just going to kind of use that as a starting basis. It's obviously a realistic thing that happens in your dp2 environment. You might set up the order received event to make good things happen, but maybe your order received events already make good things happen because you're using rows and your emails are automatically sent and your reports are already printed. So use this one for whatever example you might want. I'm going to make my order received event do some things, make some things happen. And then I'll export images, and I'm going to make the exporting of images make some things happen. Send an email, maybe an email to the customer that says, okay, your image is ready, here's a link to it. Maybe it also sets and updates the order status in dp2, or I don't know, maybe a status in some other system. Again, guys, this is examples. You'll hear me say the same things throughout the session, just for new people, additional people coming onto the session. I want to make sure that some really key points are emphasized. Plus, you guys might not know this, but our attention spans for most of us are good for about 90 seconds at any one time. And then after that, all of these other thoughts start flooding into our brain. right? About what we did last night, what we're going to do tonight, what our to-do list is to do after this meeting. And then we kind of, you know, rein ourselves back in. So as an instructor, I think it's important to say the same thing over and over again, because you might catch it once out of 3 or 4 times. Or if you catch it all, like every time I say the same thing, I really commend you for your listening skills. Maybe when a job is rendered, maybe that's the thing that does something. Again, I'm using these as examples because we really want to emphasize with you that we have this functionality in dp2, but usually, as always, with dp2 and the doors wide open, it's really up to you to define how you use it, in what automated fashion, especially when it comes to these events. What are your events and what do you want to happen? When you get a printer error, we do have, this is one of our examples in the system that we have in there for you. When a printer batch error occurs, that could trigger an event that you have set up that maybe lets your printer people know. Maybe it sends them an email, maybe it sends them a text as well to let them know that there's some sort of printer error. And then maybe the final event, kind of in this order, you know, traveling with an order throughout your system. Maybe the last thing that happens is the order gets shipped, and maybe that's also an event that you want to trigger something and make something happen, send an order shipped email. So helpful resources, guys, you're well taken care of. I'm going to bounce over to dp2 now. I'll start with the dp2 help file. Because this is only 45 minutes, because this is a micro learning session where it's designed to give you information. You know, we want you to know that this functionality is in dp2. Hopefully you walk out of here with a conceptual understanding of it. You might be able to set it up after this session, but please remember, it's not the be-all, end-all. We certainly expect you to hit us up with some questions on the service portal and even request one-on-one training, and we'll help you with your implementation. So I'll end the session at our service portal. I'll go over to dp2 now and start it. I've used this little guy for years. When I get to my slides that say, let's do this, I searched for like another image that represented this statement so well. This little guy should be getting like residual payments or something from all the people. I know I'm not the only one that uses this cute little face to represent that let's do it type concept. Okay, so is everybody with me? Everybody sees dp2? Can you guys give me a high five just to check in? With that hand raised? Thanks, guys. Just go ahead and leave them there. I'll go ahead and clear them. We have, it looks like we have about, oh, maybe just 10 or 15 of us on the line. So thanks, you guys. I'm going to clear those and I'll check in with you again and ask you for those again. So I'm going to go to the help contents and show you what's new in 20.3. That's where this event functionality resides. We'll give you some 20.2 and 20.1 helpful information too. But I want you to just know that you're well taken care of. There's this is where I'm sitting today in this event management session, is this auto notification using event category. It's very robust, so use it after today's session. It'll give you some of those same definitions. It'll show you step by step, guys, how to show you some of the stuff that I'm going to be walking through as well. So we think between these micro learning sessions, you're going to have access to the recording after the session. You can kind of jump to the place you need to. You can use this supplemental help information that our team really did a great job with. So use this information to help you guys along, okay? All right, so I'm going to make some really good things happen. I'm going to show you events and I'm going to trigger them, and you're going to get hopefully a conceptual view of how things flow throughout the system. Well, first of all, you have a new events category. So after you install 20.3, be sure to load your tasks and macros. You'll find events on your categories. And then here's that short list that you saw me in the PowerPoint presentation. There's not a lot here, so that tells us that there's really just a few pieces to put together to make it work. We have, again, great working examples for you, but you'll be the one who really decides what your events are, what triggers those events, and what good things happen as a result of that event being triggered. So I'm going to start at the top with event management. I have order received events, export images, a rendered job, couple of events, order shipped, and a printer batch error. So I kind of have these events that I'll make happen as the order, for example, flows through the lab. I'm going to filter though, and I'm going to show you how to set these up from scratch, you guys. But first, and for those of you who have been privy to my training before, I kind of do things the same way over and over again. I like to share kind of the end result, big picture working scenarios with you. I think that does a good job of kind of setting the stage and giving us those big picture conceptual overviews. And then towards the end of this session, I'll set some of these up from scratch. So because when you first open up your event manager table in dp2 and 20.3, you won't have any records. You'll have options to choose from in this event ID column. So maybe you want setting the order status to ready to make something happen. Well, you would choose order ready and you would fill this out and add some code over here. But I'm just going to work with the ones that are here. So I have 5 order received events that when I trigger an order, basically when I trigger this order received event, some good things will happen. I've set these up. I'll show you how to set these up from scratch toward the end of the session. So when an order is received, when this is triggered anyway, an email will get sent, an order report by workflow will print, a text message will get sent. But then I have this record here. It's a sync record that basically says, I'm going to wait. This record's going to wait for these first 3 things to happen before then allowing this other event or thing to happen. So this is just kind of an example, a working example to show you how you could be using these sequences in these after column. I have zeros in these first 3 records, which really allow these first 3 events to run in parallel if I have multiple workers running. A little bit more information on that in just a moment. But again, you know, this is not magic. This is the real stuff that happens, guys. This is the action. These are the KPL commands that really make whatever it is that's supposed to happen, whether it be sending an email, sending a text message, printing a report. This is where the action resides. There's several ways to get your code in here. The examples that we have for you, you can right click and you can find the right action and that will automatically place it in there. You can type in here or you can certainly access this in your text editor, make changes, save it, and load the action in there. So I'm working with events that are already set up. Toward the end, I'll start building some from scratch so that you can see it from scratch. So I want to trigger this order received event. There's a couple of ways to do it. If you're working with command files, like this sample one here, you're going to want to put a trigger statement, a trigger command in your command files so that you can trigger your events when your orders are automatically coming into dp2. So for those of you who know about command files and you work with the commands.txt file, check it out in 20.3, do a search for trigger, and you'll find 2 commands in there with the corresponding KPL that actually execute an order received and order status events. So this is how this order received event, these 5 order received events would be triggered if I were bringing that command file in with a command importer. But I want to show you the other way too for your testing and maybe also for your manually triggering, your manual triggering of events. I'm going to go to this order, the order data table, and I'm going to right click on the order. And there's going to be this trigger order event for selected orders when you guys have events set up in your system that are in an order category. So before I choose anything, I just want to point out a couple of things. In order for you to have that trigger right click menu in your order data table, you'll have to have events in your event manager table, and they'll also have to belong to this order category. So some of these items are available to you, some you'll type in yourself, and I'll show you how to do that. So let me go back to the order data table. Let me right click and go to this trigger right-click menu that will be available to you when you do have some events set up in dp2. And I'm going to manually trigger this order received. It says, okay, I've triggered it. Let's get an understanding of what it means when these events are triggered. And I'll practice good clean habits of cleaning up my tables along the way because you're watching. Normally I would have about 100 tables or so open up in dp2, probably not unlike you guys, so I'll keep things neat and tidy along the way. So what happens when these events get triggered, either automatically or manually? Well, it went to a queue. So I'm opening up the queue that these events went to. They went to this queue named main here. It looks like I have my printer batch errors in here too. I'm just going to delete those to kind of keep it clean. So I just triggered these same 5 order received events are sitting in this remote work queue for main because of this relationship that I'm pointing out to you. And they're sitting there and they're waiting and they're ready, and a couple are pending because remember, these last 2 won't happen until the first 3 successfully happen. And these columns sequence and after get translated to these parent and batch ID and after ID columns here. So they're ready and they're waiting, but nothing will happen until a worker is running or multiple workers running, pulling from there. So I'm just going to selected the wrong one, start queue. So I can run 1 worker, multiple workers on the same workstation. Workers can be running on different workstation. Just a heads up for next week, guys. Maybe some of you are already registered for Pat's class next week. I think she has 2 of them, both Tuesday and Thursday of next week, on workers and worker queues. You'll get a deeper dive into all of the advantages of working with remote work queues and workers and logging and error handling and all of the functions and features. You'll get a deeper dive into the advantages and mechanics of worker queues and workers. So now all I have to do to make all these good things happen is to run the worker, and emails are being sent, text messages are being sent, reports, well, in my case, are attempted to be printing. I'll just cancel that. My phone just went off because I got a text message, you guys. You just probably heard that audible. I just received an order received email, and it looks like the last thing that happened is the order status was updated. So hopefully this shows you kind of that relationship between when an event is triggered, it goes to a work queue. I did not have a worker running initially, so I was showing you that relationship. There's settings for your work queues. Mine are set to delete these upon success. So if I refresh this, all of my entries in the work queue are gone. I'm going to disable this just to set myself up for the next one I want to run you through before I start building some from scratch for you. And before I do that, just let me bounce out to my email. And if I just refresh this, they all come from Peter V. So here's my, hey, we received your order. And this is a heads up for a couple of weeks from now, you guys. I'll end this session by showing you our service portal. I'll show you where you can find and register for additional micro learning events with us. In a couple of weeks, I'm holding an HTML tools and customizing emails class. So I'll get into more detail as to how you guys can modify our default emails that we do give you in the system. This is our default order received email. We have a default printer error email. We have a default order shipped email. Those are the ones that I'm working with in here. And for those of you who are, HTML savvy, you can follow along with me in that session, and you could probably be modifying, some of your emails even in that session in a couple of weeks. So I just wanted to show you that good things have happened here. How you guys doing so far? Can we just pause here and check in with me? Give me a hand raise if you're doing okay. Thanks, Jason, Amber, awesome. Thanks, you guys. Awesome, great. Yeah, leave those up and I'll check in with you again. And as we're going along, feel free to use your questions box. you can use this little skinny arrow to expand the right-hand side of your screen if it's not already expanded for your GoToWebinar panel anyway. Feel free to type in questions during the session, and any questions that I get during the session, I'll put together a Q&A via an email format, and I'll send that to everybody who's on the line. So if you don't want to ask a question at the end, that's okay. You could type it in and our learning will continue. I'll just kind of put those in as generic, Q&As for everybody to benefit from. All right, guys, well, thanks for checking in there. Let me run another event or two, and then I'll start breaking this down into a little bit more, here's how you do it from scratch detail. So let's say, let me go to the order status to show you what that was updated to. Okay, so the order was received. It triggered 5 order received events that made good things happen, right? An email was sent, text was sent, report was printed, and the last thing that happened was this status was updated to color correct. So let's say, traveling through this order in the lab, let's say the color correctors have completed it, images are optimized and cropped, and now they're ready basically to get rendered. So let's do some rendering. First of all, from the export images window, you're going to see in a second that Tom actually wrote in a hook right inside of the export images dialog for you to trigger some export image events if you want upon those images being exported from that workflow, export images. In this case, what am I doing? I'm sending an email and updating again the order status. This action ID column, you guys, I'll kind of start to expose some different information to you along the way. This action ID is a field for you to enter into, and really all it does is summarize the real action, the real KPL commands that make these good things happen. You can categorize them. The ones that are in the order category, they show up in your right-click trigger menu of your order data table. You send them to a queue of your choice. Your worker is then running, looking into that queue. These have to get triggered though. Okay, so the trigger in this case I want to show you is the export images dialog. And just because it's called export images, I'll show you now in export images that it really could be called whatever you guys want to call it. So let me go to the export images dialog for this test order that I'm in. Looks like I have a few images in there. I want to point out to you, it will be in this recording on the format tab. Here's basically the hook for you to choose what event, maybe this, in this event ID can make multiple things happen, right? You saw order received make 5 things or 4 things happen. This one's going to make 2 things happen. And it's because of this relationship here, this event ID dropdown will actually trigger those events upon exporting these images. So let me get the job done. Let me just choose export. I'm pretty sure I have a render engine running because you guys know normal things happen when you export from here. I'm going to a print queue and a render engine is running. Let me just make sure my render engine was running. Okay, my render engine was running. My worker's not though. So after having gone through the normal rendering hoops of a print queue and the render engine, well, now I'm going to assume that these events, export images, have been triggered because this was the event ID that I had selected in the export images dialog box. So let me check it out. I can search on work queues here. I could choose all from within this worker window, and I can see now that the main queue has 2 events sitting in there. And the only reason I didn't leave this running after I ran it the first time was just to yet emphasize with you guys again the order and the flow of how these events get triggered, where they go when they get triggered. They go to this queue, they'll sit there and they'll wait. They'll be in a ready state forever until then the worker is running, which I just ran. So now it sent the email. I'll show you the email because it could be an email. Maybe your export images, maybe with a process after script, or maybe even just your output path in export images, writes your image to a server maybe an FTP server that you're hosting locally, so it's just an output path. And then you want to send an email that says, hey, here's a link to your digital download, or maybe it's even an attachment. So you have some options there. So anyway, I'll refresh this again. Those are gone from there. This time I'll leave this running. Let me just bounce out, show you a different email. I customized this one very simply. It says, hey, your digital download is ready. Click here to download. I don't think I really have a valid path in my sample here because I'm not really writing it out anywhere. So just for example's sake, and again, in a couple of weeks, I am hosting an email HTML tool customization session where we can take a deeper dive into some of these additional areas that pertain to events. This topic is very robust, so we didn't want to give you all the pieces and parts, but hopefully we're setting the stage for these other pieces that you can tap into next week with Pat, workers and worker queues, and then 2 weeks from now with emails and HTML customization. So I'll just do one more here. I think that's really cool. That's for you guys to see, and then I'll start setting it up. Let's say a digital download. Maybe it's a file that gets rendered that makes good things happen. So to make this happen, I'll go to the order items. I have this this job in here, and I'll show you the code that's in here, you guys. And again, you know, some of the pieces and parts that I'm showing you might not be appropriate for everyone's eyes, depending on what your role is in the lab. But I know from last week, I had such a vast, you know, kind of audience of roles and programmers and IT and operation that I wanted to make sure that I gave kind of a sampling of for everyone who was on the call as to where you might need to start thinking about going to make good things, good events happen. So I'm going to view this as text just so that I can show you that the layout file that, now I'm showing you the job, but this really resides in this digital file. So it includes this events class, and it includes the trigger for the digital download event. Here's the actual name of my event in the event manager table. And then I'll show you, again, for appropriate eyes, you know, I know that you kind of have to put all these pieces together with the right players in your lab. But here in this process after keyword for save image is really where the triggering, right, of the digital download event happens when this file gets rendered and saved out. So, I mean, if that's not making sense to everybody, take this session, you know, for what it's worth, and obviously we're going to help you put some of the pieces and parts together when you're ready for implementation. But I just ran that, and again, normal kind of printer queue and render engine things happen. Looks like I did leave this one running, so I left it running this time because I think you saw a couple of times the relationship between the worker queue and the worker. So another email, you know, got sent based on these events being triggered from having the code basically that triggered these this event, and two things happened. So it looks like the last thing that happened was the status now of this order should be set to finishing. Okay, so I'm going to do one from scratch, and maybe this is the part you guys have been, you know, kind of wanting to see. I mean, my gosh, if you had a dp2 workstation next to you, you could follow me along for these next two, and you could very well have working examples set up as a result of this. So I'm going to say the last thing that kind of happens in this chain of order events in dp2 would be, hey, the order gets shipped now. So maybe that triggers some events, right? It sends an email, it updates a status, it does something. Again, you guys, I'm only using examples. So we have some examples for you in the system, but we really want you to decide how to use this. So I'll start from scratch as if your event manager table were empty, and you can start with a new event. So we give you some samples to start with. Thought I was trying to save that, but I'm not. So in this drop down, what you'll have by default, guys, right out of the box in 20.3 software are all of your order statuses that are in your database that you could choose from. So maybe changing, I'm going to use order shipped as an example, maybe the operator manually changing the status to order shipped. Well, that's going to trigger this event. Or maybe you have a different automatic way of updating the status in your dp2 order to shipped. So I'm going to say this, I want that to send an email, so I'm just typing in there. Let's say I want to be able to trigger it from that manual right click that says trigger the order ship. So I'll put it in the order category so it will appear as a trigger that I could manually trigger from the right click menu. I want it to go to the main queue. If you guys don't have any queues to choose from at first when you're going through this, just go ahead and type in main, because main is a valid queue that we ship with dp2, but it may or may not populate in the drop-down for you initially. Go ahead and enable it. You can leave these defaults as is. Now the something, the KPL, remember it's not magic, it's KPL commands that make something happen when this event is triggered. Let's say the first thing I want to happen is the order shipped email gets sent. You're going to right click and you'll go to these action categories down here. If you do want an email, the first thing that you're going to see in 20.3 is you'll see order related order emails. You'll see maybe some emails that you have had in your system. If you were setting up KC2, you would see those emails listed in here. But I'm going to show you right now, before I even select anything, I'm going to bounce out and go to our email manager tool and show you a couple of pieces that you are going to have in place if you want some of your events to send emails when they're triggered. Because you very well, guys, you may not have any emails listed here, or if you're just installing 20.3, you would not have our most recent kind of generic set of emails to choose from here until you do one more or a couple more things. So I'm going to leave you hanging there so that I can go over here to this email manager task. It's pretty much one of the only ones I haven't selected yet, kind of in this short list. I started the worker, I opened up queues, I could have searched for a queue here. This would show me active workers in the database. So it's a short list of tasks, and hopefully this is helping you putting the pieces together. Will certainly help you live too. But you would need to go to your email manager. Now, in order to send emails, you'd have to have your communication established with your email server. So there's good help here. If you press F1, use the chapter book to go here. But if you call on your IT person, they're going to know how to set up and communicate with your email server pretty readily there. And there's ways down the screen here to send a test email. Make sure that you're contacting your email server okay, and you can send a test email. But on the templates tab, this is where you're going to go to load our new templates and to even clean up some older KC2 templates that you may not be using anymore, but maybe you installed them as part of your initial setup process with KC2. You'll choose this Manage Email Templates tool that'll open up the dp2 email templates table. You may or may not have anything in there. So you can go to Actions and you can import new email templates. Those will get you a short list, but good, generic order received email, generic order shipped email, a printer failure email, and I think a generic text message sample as well. So it'll give you a good start. And also what we have in here for you in this email templates right click or actions menu is the ability to remove all of your KC2 email templates that you might have in your system still that you're no longer using or doing any testing with. So I kind of had to break from where I was going with that so that I could show you these two really important pieces of getting your email server communication set up and established and loading those templates. There's also some really cool help message here if you are sending emails as text messages, and the team put together a variety of services and how those either SMS or MMS formats are set up for different service providers. So cool stuff there. So once you do bounce out, I think I just maximized everything. So once you do go to right click and you don't have any, it's kind of grayed out here. So just kind of take notice that, oh, this is where the good stuff is, right? Remember, It's not the magic, it's the KPL, it's the actions. This is where they're going to reside, but you might not have a short list if you didn't load those emails. Okay, so thanks for kind of bearing with me there as I had to bounce out to show you how to install these if you're installing 20.3 and you're empty. So I'm going to choose the generic order shipped sample email. That's the one that you could very well have in there. Are you sure you want to replace the action? Yes. So here is what really got coded in there. If you can edit right within here if you need to make any changes. You can hit edit action. I'm going to show you that one on the next one that I set up actually and change the status to something else. So let me duplicate this one. And this time I want the same order shipped event to update the status. So I want my order status to be updated based on also the order shipped. I want to enable it, but instead of, I just duplicated it. So this would actually send the same email again. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to order related. We give you this set order status to, and by default, you'll see all of your order statuses. So maybe I want to put my order status to complete because I'm absolutely done and that's the last thing. Maybe you want to set it to a status that you don't have in your list. So let's say I could choose finish, but I'll choose that for just beginning's sake, just to show you that maybe the status you want to ultimately set it to is not here. I could change it in here. I could come in, I could type, I could save. I just want to use this opportunity to show you how you could load this action into an editor, make your changes, add additional KPL here, whatever it is. So this is where I'll say I want to update to a complete status. I'll save it. I'll come back here and load that action in, and now I'll ultimately save it from here. So I'm ready to trigger this. Let me show you how I'm going to trigger it. I'm actually going to go to this order data table and I'm going to set the status here to shipped and just save it. So that will trigger the event. So we have, again, guys, you've heard me say it, we have great examples for you to kind of help wrap your head around this and how all these pieces and parts fit together. But we want you to just clearly know that these are examples. It's totally up to you to decide what your events are, how they're triggered, and when they're triggered, what good things happen, based on that particular event. And then the last one I want to show you before I open it up to any questions with our audio lines open, everyone, would be this printer batch error. We have by default for you printer batch error, printer response error. So I'll just delete this one from scratch, just so again, you have another working example of adding an event from scratch, a very likely event. So here's all the statuses. Now this does contain my manual ones that I've added. I've added this digital download rendered. I've added the export image. So, choose from our samples in here, but you'll certainly be typing in your own event IDs here based on what your events are. But I'll do this printer batch error. I'll just say this sends an email, to someone internally to let them know that there's been a printer error. I'll put that in a printer category just to organize that. I'll send it to the main queue. I'll enable it. I'll right click. I just wanted you to see this again. I'm not going to trigger this one, but I wanted you to see this again of just the process of adding, identifying the queue, giving it a brief action ID name. And then we'll give you this one. If you've loaded those emails, you'll be able to get to that printer error, printer failure code that's going to get loaded in here. And it does send by default, that's the code that we have in there for you that sends that a printer error, printer failure email. So this would automatically get triggered, guys, when your render engine encounters a batch error. That's going to be the trigger to send this event to a worker queue with a worker running. It'll perform this action, in this case of sending an email. So guys, how are you doing? One more check-in. Maybe give me a hand raise if you think you're doing okay. You don't have to give it to me, but is kind of the flow here making sense? I want you guys to conceptually, again, I'm not going to tell you to tell me that it makes sense if it doesn't make sense. I mean, if anybody, you know, obviously if you need our help, I'm going to wrap up by showing you how to ask us for help. But thank you for some of those confirmations, you guys. I appreciate it. So now I'm going to clear the hands. I am going to open up the phone lines from my end. Oh, actually, you know, sorry, guys. I'm not actually going to do that. I'm going to keep them closed because it's really too noisy if I do that. I'm going to ask you guys now to use the hand raise if you do want to ask your question. You know, there's only about 10 of us on the line, so don't worry about any question that you have is probably a similar one to anyone else might have. I'm also not going to continue to ask you to. I don't want to put anybody on the spot either. I kind of know what that feels like too. If you want to just ask your question in your question box, remember at the end of this session by tomorrow sometime, I'll put together a Q&A of any questions that I did get. I didn't check here recently, but let me see if I did have any come in. Yeah, I did have a couple come in, so I'll be sure to get an email out to you guys. But if anybody wants to raise your hand now, I would open up your phone line and I'd give you the stage, you know, because my voice is getting a little hoarse now at this point. I'm just kidding. You guys know I could talk forever. I'm just joking. But does anybody want to give a hand raise and I'll open up the line to you? Okay, well, if you change your mind, raise it. I'll keep my eye on that for one more second. Let me go to the help contents one more time, and I'll go to the What's New 20.3 document. And I'm just looking for a hand raise one more time, so bear with me. All right. And I want to show you that we do have a service portal link in the help file. If you're not on 20.3 yet, you'll have to get to the service portal another way or your customary way. So you guys know how to reach us, right? I'm broadcasting to you from a room here in Rochester at Kodak Alaris. It's our dp2 room where we all huddle together every morning and we talk about you guys. We talk about your service requests that you have in the system, your training requests that you put here in the system, your questions that you ask. So, you know, from our perspective, it's all about you. And with this event management topic, as with everything else in dp2, guys, it's always you that tell us how you really need to use it, how you need to implement it, how you need to make it happen. So we fully expect to hear from you after this session when you're trying it, when you're attempting to try it. You know, you can request training. You can just you can do it as a problem. If it's a question, you can really kind of use any either report a problem or request for training to hit us up. And then here's a link. Just wanted to remind you of other micro learning sessions that are coming up.